Are we good on the recorder? Good, okay. Good evening, everyone. With a quorum of members present, I'll call the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting for Monday, November 20th, 2023 to order. The first item on our agenda for tonight is to approve the minutes of our last meeting from 10/16 of 23, copies of which were published in the packets. Did anyone note any revisions or adjustments to the minutes that they need? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as written. Motion by McElhaney, is there a second? Second by Dinny. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, the minutes are approved. Item number 2 is to consider approval or denial of various license applications. We have 4 tonight that are recommended for denial. Under our ordinance, those individuals are allowed to address the committee and talk with us about their record and anything that may be factually inaccurate. The first one we have recommended for denial was a carryover from last month, Jason McClone. Is Jason McClone with us this evening? Mr. McClone was going to submit proof of rehabilitation to be reviewed by the PD for this meeting, so we held action on it. Let the record show he has not appeared this evening and that the clerk's office has not yet received any of those documents. At this point, if we would decide to act on his application with the batch, in terms of the recommended denial, he's certainly free to reapply and resubmit those documents if he should so choose. Marissa Atkinson, come on up to the podium. And it looks like this particular application is denied based on, it looks like 3 OWI convictions in recent years. Is that correct? And our ordinance actually stipulates how many events a person can have in a certain length of time. Is there anything on your record that is factually inaccurate?
No.
Okay. And I guess then, under what circumstance would you make the case that the committee should not agree with the recommendation then of the police chief if the record is correct?
Well, I'd like it taken into consideration. I've had almost 3 years now, coming as January this year, well, this coming year, I should say, since my last conviction, which is more time between than I had between any of my OWIs. So I have done what's been recommended for me, and I'm just looking to move forward. My next step is getting my license back, which is very expensive, which is why I'm looking to do this, because it'd be another part-time job on my side of my full-time job.
Sure. Okay. I guess in terms of how we look at the record, when we look at the quantity of violations, these actually, in terms of time, are pretty fresh. They're fairly recent. I guess, do you have anything that you would add to the recommendation, Lieutenant Pauls?
I don't. I know the chief looked at the actual violations and directly on the public health and safety recommendations, and he took those into account, and it fit the parameters of the
denial.
Of the denial, yeah.
Yeah. Committee members, any questions for Ms. Atkinson?
And this
Go ahead,
is an
Lou.
operator's license for?
Server.
Server for liquor and?
Yep.
And, okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. If not, you can take a seat. Thank you for coming in to explain that. We have 2 additional. Tiffany Stone. Has Tiffany Stone appeared this evening? We'll let the record show that she has not. Also recommended for denial is public transport driver Matthew Blanchard. Come on up, Matthew, if you'd like to talk to us about the record. Anything on your record that is factually inaccurate?
No.
Okay. And I think that the recommendation, it appears, based on what's been published here, they're looking at the totality of the record. Some of those violations are rather serious. As a transport driver, one of the things that is often expected is that you'll be placed in a situation where someone is placed in your vehicle that, is maybe not necessarily, may be impaired in some way. And so as a public transport driver, we have to, be able to trust that, there will be a heightened level of responsibility and integrity with the transport and the treatment of that passenger. So, I think that's what we look at with transport driver licenses. And then when we see, the totality of the history here, that seems concerning. Why would you request that we not agree with the police chief on this one?
Well, it says in here, if I can provide evidence of rehabilitation and fitness. I brought everything that you had asked for, or at least everything that the ladies in the office had asked for. I brought my discharge papers from the military. I also brought my discharge papers from probation and parole.
Okay,
I was discharged from parole about February of 2019, but when I sat my year and a half or so in Kettle Moraine, meeting with psychologists and so forth, I had no program needs or anything else like that, so they sent me to vocational school where I became a mason. I was top of my class. I spoke at my graduation. I have a copy of my speech here. I have a picture of me receiving my diploma. I also have my diploma as well.
okay,
So I've taken great measures to affect changes in my life that are more positive. I put in a lot of volunteer time. I'm currently homeless and trying to change my residential situation, so I stay at the shelter, but I volunteer there a lot. I've cleaned up some of the homeless encampments that were back in the brush and things back there. I've picked up hypodermic needles. I picked up all manner of things, various drug paraphernalias and things like that. So
sure. The situation is that, with the evidence of rehab that you wish to submit, we typically aren't able to review it on the fly. The police chief would need to review that and would need to then discuss that situation with you. So I guess if you're agreeable to it, one thing we could do is hold action on your application for tonight, give him a chance to do that review and talk with you, and then we could act on your license next month at our next meeting, because that would give you some time to network with him and produce that proof for review. And then he can decide if he would either uphold or change his recommendation for us.
very well.
Okay. All right. So if the committee is amenable to that, we'll allow Mr. Blanchard the opportunity to present those documents to Chief Barnes and discuss that situation and see if that changes his recommendation. And so we'll carry yours over to next month. So when we act on the batch, we'll exempt yours, denial tentatively for today until we know a little more.
Yes, ma'am.
So-
And then what's the process for just submitting this stuff to the chief? Because the ladies in the office next door just told me to bring everything with me tonight.
You can actually supply it to the clerk's office. They can photocopy it or copy it and get it to Chief Barnes. And then he'll do that review, and if he has questions, he'll certainly contact you or reach out to you.
This building has a clerk's office?
Yes, in fact,
Pardon?
Cody is the deputy clerk.
Very good.
Go ahead.
Couldn't he just give it to the lady officer here?
If it needs photocopied,
Oh,
though.
okay.
If we don't want to take your originals, if they're your only copies, we'll want to have it copied so you can have your originals back.
Very good.
So let's do that. We'll hold off on that one until our December meeting, and that'll give Chief Barnes a chance to do some review. With that, we also have a couple of events and things that are as part of the list. We've got special events. You can see those listed in the packet. A lot of those we've seen before. We have a Class B beer application from a new business called CW Flybags. Immediately preceding this meeting, the Liquor License Review Subcommittee met with the owner of that prospective new business. He has a defined plan of operation and told us his intent is not to admit underage 21 into the premises, which makes the management of the license much, much easier. So the recommendation of the subcommittee unanimously was that we approve that Class B with no concerns. So with that, I would accept a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff, with the exception of Matthew Blanchard. Would someone like to make that motion? Oh, motion from McElhaney, is there a second? Second from Larson? Okay. Further discussion then? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, so those licenses then are either accepted or denied as recommended. And then we'll consider Mr. Blanchard next month. Item number 3 on our agenda is a hearing. Sean and Heather Van Dolfsen, owners, appealing a dangerous animal declaration dated October 31st, 2023 of their dog Riker. And so we'll welcome the Van Dolfsens. And
Just me tonight.
Are you Sean?
Just
Okay.
me. Yeah,
Welcome.
thank
Have you
you.
brought any other witnesses to testify on your behalf?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
And so with regard to the city's case, we do have Humane Officer Ashley Bishop, who's going to be available tonight by phone. She has worked this case. I think she will be offering testimony. And let's see. And Lieutenant Kurtz also, are you offering testimony tonight at all?
I'm just providing, if
You're
you need photos.
just-
She's
photos
here
and
if
evidence?
She's here if we need her.
Okay, all right, so we won't need to swear her in if she just brought evidence along, because we will swear in Ashley. Okay, so with that, recognizing that only 2 witnesses, the clerk will swear in both witnesses.
Okay. Will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth on the testimony you're providing?
I do.
Ashley?
Okay. So we'll note both witnesses have been sworn. The reason for convening our hearing today is an appeal of the dangerous animal designation. And I guess before we get started, I need some clarification from you as the owner. In reading some of the material that we were provided for tonight's meeting, I wasn't clear on what you are actually appealing. So there's a couple different things. It looked like you were definitely seeking an appeal on certain requirements of the dangerous dog declaration, like the collar in lieu of a harness and the outdoor kennel in lieu of outdoor supervision and things like that. Are you just looking to have waivers on those individual components?
No, I would like to have his classification as a dangerous animal repealed. That is primarily why I'm here tonight.
Entirely. Okay, and so for that,
Yes.
we do need the hearing. The other items, if they were just elements of control or containment of the animal, those individual elements you could work out between yourself and the police department without a hearing. So,
Right.
But if we want to repeal it altogether, we do need to go through this process, and then the committee will deliberate. So that brings us here today because of the dangerous animal provisions found in Chapter 8 of our Wausau Municipal Code. A copy of these provisions should have been provided to you when the animal was designated dangerous by the chief of police. Did you receive a copy of the ordinance?
I did, thank you.
Okay. And so the facts of which resulted in a declaration by the police chief was found in a police report that should have been mailed along with the notice of this hearing. Did you get those items as well?
Yes,
Okay. So this is an informal hearing. It's designated to allow you to present evidence as the dog owner. It also allows the city to produce evidence through Humane Officer Bishop and her testimony. We don't have a ton of rules for management of the hearing. We do request that you refrain from irrelevant testimony, examples of which are the length of time since the incident, the age of the animal, the fact that the animal is or isn't licensed, things that have been done to the animal in the past that are irrelevant to the situation at hand that happened with the injured party. Things that are relevant, though, if the animal was being hit, attacked, teased, if it was being provoked, if it had been cornered, things that are relevant to the circumstances of the bite, we definitely accept those things as testimonial evidence. If the animal has completed any type of training since the event, obviously that's relevant, we'd be interested in that. And if you've taken additional steps to modify things at home for either your control or containment of Riker. So those are kind of the rules. It's my responsibility as the chair to decide what's relevant and to include or exclude testimony. So if anything is either repetitive or irrelevant, I'll make those determinations. Our hearing today is limited to 1 hour, but it certainly doesn't have to take 1 hour. But
Right.
we can actually, if depending on the number of witnesses and things, grant additional time. But we do try to be mindful of your time. So with that, you should know that as a result of this, regardless of what the committee decides, your dog will not be ordered to be destroyed or euthanized as a result of today's review. Our function today is only to determine if the animal is dangerous as designated, and we ask that, everyone involved observe decorum during the hearing, and you'll receive a written decision from the committee whether the designation is upheld or waived. Those findings of fact will be issued tonight at the end of the hearing, so you'll be able to obtain that right away.
okay, good.
So with that, I guess, Mr. Van Dolfsen, in our packets, we've received your letter
Good.
outlining the situation with the dog. I guess if you'd just like to walk us through, go ahead.
Ashley goes first.
You want Ashley first. Okay. Let's then first take the city representative's testimony first. Ashley, if you'd like to walk us through your investigation of this incident, and then we'll bring up Mr. Van Dolfsen.
Sure. I received a phone call from the victim's son. That was the first notification that I had had about the incident. that call had come to me on 10/24. And he explained the situation where his 90-year-old mother had been bit by a dog, and he wanted to tell me about how bad it was and that he had photographs. And so I had offered for him to bring the photographs down to the police department for me to see. I don't always get all of the quarantines immediately. Sometimes they go directly to the health department, and that's what happened in this case. The victim had gone to the emergency room, was seen, and then the documentation went right to the health department. So I got the 3 photos that you guys, I believe, should have available to you in your packet. And her son had warned me that the last one was the worst one. I was able to see in the photographs that using the ruler, there was about a 2.5-inch gash on each side, and then it came across her arm, and it kind of created this flap of a wound. And so I called the health department to get a copy of the quarantine order so that I would have everybody's name and information. And that was given to me, and I spoke with Lieutenant Kurt Balls regarding the situation. Based on the severity of the bite, we determined that it was important that we declare Riker dangerous. In the documentation with the quarantine order, I was able to see where Riker's vet clinic was, and sometimes I will call, actually I will usually call, and find out whether or not there's any kind of flag or anything in the system at the vet clinic for any animals. And the vet clinic was actually very surprised. They said that they've been working with Riker for years, and that although he gets very, very excited, this was somewhat out of character for him. I put the paperwork together along with the letter and the checklist, and on the 31st, I went to Riker's owner's home and spoke with Sean. And when I was there, Riker greeted me at the door, and he was fairly nonchalant about me being there, honestly. He didn't bark or anything. He lifted my hand and then proceeded to lay down. And that was one of the things that Sean had brought up during our conversation when I told him I was there to declare Riker dangerous. And I reiterated the fact that due to the extent of the injuries that the victim sustained, that we were declaring based on that, but that if he wanted to have any waivers for any of the parts, he could contact the police department and we would look into that. Immediately he talked about wanting a waiver for the fence and the kennel, and he explained that Riker is never outside without him, that he was actually upset that some of the neighbors behind him left their dogs outside on a leash in the yard without supervision. And I would like to also note too that Riker did have a well-fitted harness on him, and so I believe that the family would be very responsible in making sure that Riker is safely contained in the property. And so I told him that, he could request that waiver, and that I would talk to my supervisor and it would likely be approved. I delivered all the paperwork, including the letter, the checklist, and a copy of the ordinance. And later that day, I called and spoke with the victim. Initially, when I told her we were declaring Riker dangerous, she was upset. She was nervous about how her neighbors were going to take it. They had been friends for many years, she said. And all she had wanted was that Riker be muzzled. And I explained to her that the only way that I have the ability to make sure that Riker is being muzzled on a legal level was to do the dangerous dog declaration. And that ultimately the decision came down to my supervisor's determination based on her injuries, and that, it didn't necessarily reflect on her, and that hopefully it wouldn't impact her relationship with her neighbors. I later had a conversation with Mr. Dolphin, right? On the phone, he had some questions about the requirements and the appeal. I answered the questions to the best of my ability, and we are now here.
Okay. And so it looks like, according to the paperwork, we have that the spay neuter and the microchip has been done?
Correct.
Okay. And obviously, the harness was an early commitment that has already been made, so that is also done. I'm just looking at the boxes that were checked, that are marked on the designation. I see that, muzzle is among them. Assuming that the committee, if the committee waives off the dangerous designation, then, all of this goes with it. If the committee upholds the designation, obviously that would remain a part of it, right? That you would have to ensure compliance with?
Correct.
Okay.
May I make a
Go ahead.
comment?
Well, as part of Ashley's testimony, when that concludes, we'll allow you to
Thank you.
cross-examine her
Sure.
testimony, and then we'll have recross from the committee members if anyone has any. Does that conclude your account of the event, Ashley?
Yeah, that's everything I've got up until this point.
Okay. Committee members, any questions of Ashley about her account of the event? If not, Mr. Van Dolfsen, you can ask Ashley your questions.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions per se. The comment that I wanted to make, a couple of things. I am sensitive to the fact that we don't want to be here as longer than we need to. I think it's relevant for me to establish our commitment to the city and our commitment to our neighbors to keep them safe, first and foremost. Riker is our third tripod. We have always used a tight-fitting harness like this for our dogs. They are never off a leash, ever. We walk them in our neighborhood. They're always controlled. Our neighborhood, and I know I mentioned this in our letter, but, I feel exceptionally lucky. We've lived there for about 20 years, and we all look out for each other. We know each other. Riker's made friends and acquaintances with many of our neighbors, and he loves to see them. He loves to be petted by them. I want to make it clear that we never, ever let him meet a new person on a walk unless they want to, unless they ask to. We will always keep him away and keep him under control. Now, this is different than what happened on the 23rd. And first and foremost, as a former nurse, I know Rudy's injuries were terrible. I saw the pictures myself, and I'm not trying to minimize that in any way, shape, or form. I do know that, whether Riker was provoked is really key to this, and I believe that he was. And I know this is in Officer Bishop's report as well, but very briefly, as I was walking Riker down Green Hill Drive, we have two neighbors 2 doors up from us that just moved from Texas, and they happened to be in their driveway and said, "Oh, you have the coolest dog in the neighborhood. Can we meet him?" And I said, "Of course." Right? And so, they put their hands out, and Riker went and sniffed their hands and loved being petted by them, right? He was very, very affectionate and very playful. And that is the way that he is when people ask to meet him. He's trusting of humans. What we didn't know was that Mrs. Schutte happened to be walking across on the other side of the street, and as far as I can tell, opted to come across the street and join us. And I didn't know that she was coming, and more importantly, Riker didn't know that she was coming. So it was 5:30 at night. It was getting dark. Mrs. Schutte was wearing all black, a long black puffy coat and a black hat. And as she approached us, she put her arm out like this, I think because she didn't want Riker to, touch her or whatever. But, he was startled by that, and he was scared by that. And he did what any dog would do, I believe, is he wanted to defend me. And so I believe that he did feel provoked. I felt he was startled. It was a very unusual situation, and as the vet said, very uncharacteristic for him. A couple of things. I showed you the harness. I didn't mean to interrupt Officer Bishop before. First and foremost, she has done an amazing job. I don't have any complaints with her communication or her documentation. I really appreciate her service. The other thing that I wanted to show you is that if you repeal his dangerous animal, that doesn't mean that we're not going to comply with what is in there. I think it's a good idea. I have put signs on the house, and we have gone back to this leader here that he trained with when we first got him. And what it does is it goes around his neck and up over his nose. And it controls him very well. So he's got no more than 4 feet, and I'm always in control of him. So we will not use a retractable leash with him anymore. He's using this 100% of the time, and he does really, really well with that.
Was he on a
So-
retractable when the bite occurred?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. So, again, I just want to impress upon you that even if you repeal his status, we take this very seriously. We want to keep our neighbors and friends safe, and we will control him, continue with the harness and with the leader. And I will not let him meet any new people because I don't want an accident. I don't want him to be provoked. So you have my commitment on that. You may say, well, if you're going to comply with everything, why do you want it repealed? Part of it is because, even though I have sufficient liability insurance coverage, I want to pay less for it, right? And if he's a dangerous animal, I have to pay more. So that's part of it, right? And part of it maybe is just semantics, I talked to Mrs. Schutte, Officer Bishop talked about our friendship. Our families have known each other for almost 20 years. And she said, I didn't want anything to happen to Riker. She said, I want him to, to be able to go on his walks and get fresh air. I really appreciate that. So I'm definitely open to taking questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Lou.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the pictures here. Was this just a one bite, or was it like an attack where it went? "Rah, rah, rah, rah"?
No, I really appreciate you bringing that up. Because
and I'm not, when you said the lady had black clothes on, was it a long sleeve?
yeah.
Was it long sleeved?
Yes. Now, Officer Bishop, I don't know if you saw Mrs. Schutte's coat. So what happened is immediately after it happened, I told Riker to sit down, and he sat right down by me. So he jumped up, he hit her, bit her on the forearm, and then he sat down. And, because we know each other and because I used to be a nurse, I said, hey, Rudy, let me see your arm. And I could see, she had a big skin tear. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to get the car and let me bring you to ER right now. So that's what we did. Now, I don't think that it even got through her long sleeve puffy coat. Officer Bishop, you may have seen it, I don't know. but I think it was more of a blunt, right? And of course, it tore her skin. I'm not minimizing that, but it didn't go through, and he didn't bite her again.
Okay.
So what you're saying is it just, when he bit, it just kind of cranked and tore
It
the
was a
skin? or-
twisting,
Yeah,
a
okay.
shearing force is what we would call it in the medical field.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Officer Bishop, do you have anything to add?
The only thing, my understanding was that there was 2 bites, that it was one to her forearm and then one to the hand on the opposite side.
Okay.
We don't, we obviously don't have the victim here, but if you look in the photos, there is some bruising to her other hand.
Yep.
Okay.
I did not see the jacket. However, with the age of the victim, I also can see where there'd be the potential that, it did happen that way. It's just so hard to tell in this situation
Yeah.
because of the amount of damage. Normally I'd be able to look at that forensically and tell you how it happened, but because of the amount of damage, I can't see the specific
Yeah,
punctures.
yeah. No, I understand that. So I guess, I would sort of rest my case by talking again about my commitment to keeping our neighbors and our friends safe and controlling him. I would talk about, the fact that we will comply with, most everything that has been asked for, because guess what? It's in his best interest. It's in our neighbor's best interest. But this was most uncharacteristic of him, and I do believe that he was clearly startled, scared, provoked. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions at all?
The Assistant City Attorney has one. Go ahead, Tegan.
I have more than one.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
apologize. Okay, so you told us that you were out walking Riker when new neighbors had approached and asked to pet Riker. So Ms. Schutte, that's how you pronounce it? So she approached from across the street. Can you tell me more about where Riker was in that moment and the type of leash that he was on?
Yeah, sure. So we were at the end of their driveway, sort of like right in that driveway to street area of our new neighbors. And that was on the south side of Green Hill Drive, just 2 doors up from us. I think it might be 1007 might be that house. So she would have been walking up Green Hill Drive on the other side. I saw her out of the periphery. I saw her walking. And then I was talking to the neighbors and we were getting acquainted. They just moved here from Texas. And then the next thing I know, she was right behind us and had her arm up and Riker jumped up. Now, I had his retractable leash, but I didn't have it. There was still, I'm just being honest, there was still enough play that, and she was so close that, I couldn't clamp down fast enough, right? Which is one of the reasons why we're not going to be using a retractable leash anymore.
So how did Riker get off Miss Schutte?
Well, he wasn't really on her per se. She never, and I hope I'm answering your question, she never fell down. So he jumped up, he bit her. I told him to sit down, and she never fell down. She just had her arm up, and she said, "Oh, he bit me." So that's when I said, "Okay, Rudy, let me see, let me take a look."
Okay.
Okay.
And how long did that whole scenario take, approximately?
Honestly, like 10 seconds. By the time I turned around, Riker jumped up and bit her. It just happened in the blink of an eye.
Okay. And you might not know the answer to this, so if you can't, I'll ask Officer Bishop instead. How did Miss Schutte, so we have some photographs of her from the hospital. How did she get to the hospital?
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I looked at her arm. We didn't pull her sleeve down, but I could sort of see down in her sleeve, and I could see the skin tear. So I said, Rudy, let me just get my car and let me bring you right to ER. And she said, let's do that. I have my phone with me, and I'll call my kids from the hospital. And so because we were just 2 doors down, I took Riker home, put him in the house, and then drove up and picked her up and brought her to ER.
Okay.
I will offer this. She said to me in the car, and she said to her kids at the hospital, it's my fault. I decided to cross the road, and I didn't say anything, and he was on a leash. So, I don't know if that was shared with Officer Bishop, but that's what she said to me, in truth.
And, okay. How big is Riker?
He's 60 pounds.
And how big is Miss Schutte?
Oh, she's tiny. I don't know, Officer Bishop, she's probably, 5'4"? Yeah.
I didn't, I spoke with her on the phone, so I don't have her.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, this is a public record. I don't want to just say she's tiny, but you get the impression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how long have you had Riker?
5.5 years.
And have you ever had any situation where you've previously been unable to control Riker?
I cannot think of one. No.
And how long have you known Miss Schutte?
Probably 20 years or so.
So is it safe to say that Miss Schutte is in the known circle of Riker's acquaintances?
No, I would not say that.
Tell me more about that.
Well, we've known her and her family for 20 years, and she walks in our neighborhood. I think she knows Riker on sight, but she's never met him. She's never seen him up close or petted him and that sort of thing.
And how many dogs do you currently own?
Just one.
Just one. And so how old is Riker?
9.5.
9.5. Do you know his history?
We know that he was surrendered a couple times before he ended up at the Humane Society, but I don't know anything past that.
All right. I actually have some questions for Officer Bishop, if that's okay.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Officer Bishop, are you aware of something called the bite severity scale?
Yes.
What is that?
I believe you're speaking of the EN-SPAR scale. It is a scale utilized kind of across the board in animal control and animal welfare for determining and assessing the severity of biting of dogs.
And on the bite severity scale, where do Miss Schutte's bites fall?
Her bites would fall most likely in the level 4 range.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So the level 4 is 1 to 4 punctures from a single bite, with at least one puncture deeper than half the length of the dog's canine. There may be deep bruising around the wound or lacerations.
How many levels are on that scale, Ashley?
6?
Okay. They get worse the higher you go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Level 6 is the victim is deceased.
Oh my, okay. Thank you.
And what's level 5?
Multiple bite incidents with at least 2 level 4 bites.
Okay.
So level 4 is the highest you can get on one single incident of a bite.
Correct.
Okay. And, did you speak with the ER doctors or anything, officer? No. And you said, Officer Bishop, that Miss Schutte was bitten more than once. Can you tell us more about that, please?
I had been informed that it was the one bite to her forearm and a bite to her hand on the opposite side. I'd have to recall exactly which was left and right, but and in the photographs I could see some bruising to the hand as well. But I did not see any puncture in the photograph.
Do you have the photograph in front of you?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't, or were they in, hold on,
They were included in the packet.
were they? All right. Oh, yeah, okay.
So I'm gonna ask you to look at the one of Miss Schutte's forearms. It's just not the one that has the information about document information. And you can follow along too, if you want. Mr. Randolphson, do you have a photo? Do you have the photos with you as well?
Not with me. We did receive copies, although they were fairly dark. Oh, thank you very much.
Or Lieutenant Kurtzals will provide
Okay.
you some to look at. Okay, so I am looking at the photo with the two arms without the writing underneath it, so it's the enlarged photo.
Yep.
And I'm Officer Bishop, Humane Officer Bishop, I'd ask you to look at the ring, the hand with the ring on it, the arm just underneath the thumb. There is a darker mark. Does that appear to be a puncture wound to you?
To be completely honest, in the quality of photos I have here, I don't know that I can say if that's puncture or severe bruising.
Okay.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
Officer Bishop, you said, per your information, you were told there were 2 bites. Who told you that?
The victim's son, when he called me, he explained that she had a very large laceration to the one arm, but she was also bit in the hand as well.
Did you confirm that through any other means?
I believe when I spoke with the victim, we also did discuss that as well, but we were obviously far more concerned about her one arm and her treatment that she was seeing for that.
So you did not see any medical records or anything confirming 2 bites?
I did not get any medical records because the medical records were sent to the health department. I found out about this the day after. I believe it was actually, no, it was the day after the incident. Actually, hold on, let me confirm that. Sorry. Yes, it was the day after the incident when I first even became aware of the incident. But the health department had already issued the quarantine order and had everything in the works at that point.
Okay. Do you have additional questions?
I'm just looking.
Okay.
So Ashley, you didn't go and see her in person, correct?
Correct.
So we've been talking about this, looking at the photo that has the red color and the skin with the blood. How did that get fixed? Do you know? Did she require stitches? How many stitches? Given that it was a dog bite, can they even do stitches?
I don't know the number of stitches, but you can see in the other photos that were taken at the hyperbaric chamber or the hyperbaric facility that there were stitches.
I thought I read something in the material that we were provided that the stitched area was about 2.5 inches. I don't think it had a
Yeah.
quantity of stitches though, right?
No. I was just curious.
Okay.
I don't have any other.
Okay, we don't have additional. Anyone else have additional questions for either witness?
Just one.
Go ahead, Doug.
One question. You had referred to, this is your third tripod, if I heard you right. Could you explain that?
Oh, three-legged dog.
Okay. So you
Sorry,
had three.
sorry about that,
No, it's
using
okay.
the slang term. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times, again, not intended for this to be testimony, but, you know, they get skipped over when they come into the Humane Society. Nobody wants a three-legged dog. We've kind of decided that's what we want to do, right, is give them a second chance.
Okay.
I actually have a follow-up from that.
Sure, go ahead.
How tall? So you said that that Riker's 60 pounds. How tall is Riker?
Maybe to here on me?
I can't see that. I'm sorry.
Just step out, the TV is blocking
Yeah.
our view.
I think he might be, like, maybe just under this table.
So that's like,
I mean,
2.5 feet, maybe 3?
yeah.
I'm happy to actually provide measurements if that's important to you.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Additional questions? If not, the committee will deliberate in closed session,
Yeah.
come to a decision, and then we'll prepare its findings and return to this chamber with them.
Yeah.
Let me just switch back to our agenda here. Okay. Does someone want to read the closed session language so we can enter our deliberations?
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Lou, thank you.
Closed session pursuant to section 19.851A of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering the following: deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial quasi judicial trial or hearing before the government body.
Okay, do we have a second for Lou's motion? Second by Denny. Roll call vote. Larson?
Aye.
Hanky?
Aye.
Denny?
Aye.
McElhaney? I'll vote aye as well. We will convene in the Maple Room for our deliberation and then return to this chamber with the result.